Welcome to Wealth Builders with our host, Anthony Cangemi. I'm your co host, Tony Shore, and I am extremely excited to be here today. I'm very happy because, Anthony, you and I had a great talk before the show, and you brought a very, very important topic that I think a lot of people either put off dealing with or miss out on, or it's so misunderstood that it'll be great to get some clarification. But before we get into that, Anthony, how have you been? Are you keeping busy over there? I know you love hearing from our listeners and viewers. Have you been keeping busy meeting with a lot of people?
Yeah, we have, Tony. A lot of our radio listeners, they love the show, they love the content. They said they love our co-host, and
Sure.
I mean, the first words out of their mouth, in many cases, are, "Hey, where's Tony?" I'm like,
Right.
"Well, Tony's in Minnesota."
Hey, you just tell them he's out getting pizza. They'll believe it. As much as I talk about pizza on the show and my love of pizza, just tell
Love
them
of
I'm
pizza, and also the love of what's the name of your breakfast spot over here, Tony?
the Ruby Slipper.
The Ruby Slipper.
Oh man, the best eggs Benedict I've ever had in my life. The one in the quarter is good. They have a couple locations now in the area, but the one over there that's near the quarter, there's two of them over there. They're very good.
They
Every time
are.
I go, I have to. There's something called eggs Cachon, which
Okay.
has a pulled pork on top of the poached egg, on top of their homemade biscuit with their homemade signature sauce on top of it. It is just, it's what I tell people is it will set you free, Anthony. It
Really?
will
It's
set you
just that
free.
good. Well, now I'm
It
trying to
is.
think, is it Brennan's or is it Commander's that always kind of had that, signature eggs Benedict?
I think
I
Brennan's
think
is a
it's
big
Brennan's.
one. Yeah. Yeah.
Have
You've
you
told
had
me
a Brennan's? Have you had an egg?
I have. You told me about that one, and somebody else recommended it. And the first time I came down there to, I think I was setting up your studio equipment, and I one of the first times I was there, this is a number of years ago, I went to both, and just the eggs. Nothing can beat the eggs Cachon or the atmosphere at the Ruby Slipper,
Really?
there's always if you get there like on a Saturday morning before 10 a.m., there's going to be a wait. But you just be patient, walk around for a while, and they'll buzz you. Usually, it's only 20 minutes, and you're in. Or a half hour, and it's so good.
It
It's
is,
so
huh?
good. Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
it's not outrageously expensive like some places. It's not fancy necessarily, but the decor is great, and
Uh-huh.
it's been there forever.
Uh-huh.
It's
The
just one of
Ruby Slipper.
the Ruby
I can't
Slipper.
say, and I'm here, I can't say that I have been to the Ruby Slipper.
Oh, you're missing out, and you're right there too.
Right there, yeah.
Yeah, the eggs Cachon. Trust me on that one.
Okay.
And their fresh squeezed orange juice, the eggs Cachon. Usually I sit at the counter because a lot of times when I go, I'm by myself because I'm just in town, hanging out at a hotel down there. And I get right in, get a seat at the counter. And the people that work the counter, they'll talk to you. Where are you from? And it's great. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
fantastic. So, Anthony, I know you've been busy, and we all get busy. And one of the things that we put off is planning for our future. Nobody likes to think about our own demise, right? Nobody likes to think about passing away. But it is a big part of retirement planning and your retirement income planning to figure out what you're going to do for your legacy, or enhanced planning, which is also estate planning.
Mhm.
Right? That's a
Yeah.
big deal, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, Tony, because you figure, you've worked your whole life establishing and building your estate, whether it be your investments or real estate or a business or whatever it might be. And it really ultimately it's there for our support and lifestyle and all the rest, but ultimately it will transition right to the next generation, whether it be maybe if you're married, maybe a spouse, and then maybe kids, grandkids, charities. So, yeah, how things pass on through legacy planning and estate planning is certainly a part of an overall retirement plan. And, you're right. I mean, it's not something that people, want to think about, often, but people do, consider the fact that, hey, I mean, I certainly do. If at some point, I'm going to transition out of here, like all of
Yeah.
us will,
Yeah.
and I don't want to leave a mess, a burden, or unnecessary uh, taxes or unnecessary cumbersome transition to my kids. I don't have any grandkids, but certainly have kids right now.
Yep.
And I've seen, both sides of it, even in my own family, Tony, where I've had family members that have passed away, and aunts and uncles and that, grandparents, and some of them look like they've done it. They did a terrific job, with their estate plan, their legacy plan, and it was just so nice and easy for the heirs. And then others not so well, and gets really complicated, really dicey. Can even create animosity amongst the family if things aren't clear. So, ultimately, it's part of life, and estate and legacy planning is a part of a retirement plan for
Yep.
sure. And we are try to be helpful with our clients to make sure things are set up the way they want them.
Yeah. Well, for sure. And if we're talking about the important things regarding enhanced planning or estate planning, I imagine one of the first things people need to know about are the key legal documents. What would some of those be?
Yeah, and it's not a long, lengthy list. I mean, so it's not, when you really narrow it down, it doesn't, have to be overly cumbersome. I mean, you have a will or last will and testament. And so your will transfers assets. It's really like a title transfer. If you have a home in your name, or a piece of property in your name, or a car, or a boat, or a bank account, or anything that's titled, we call it succession in Louisiana. Most states call it probate, but really all it is the retitling of an asset.
Sure.
So if I have a boat in my name and it's titled in my name, and let's say I want my oldest son to receive the boat, he's the only fisherman in the family outside of me. And so if I passed away, I would say I would want my boat to go to my son, right? My oldest son.
Yep.
Well, in my will, I can specify, hey, I'd like the boat to go to Anthony
Yeah.
Jr. And when they open succession, it's just, again, the retitling of that boat or that asset to the person that I'm looking to pass it on to. And so the will, or your last will and testament, is really your final, your document that says where these assets should be titled or retitled to who. It's almost like, and not to oversimplify succession, but it's almost like going to a title transfer place. If you sold your car, you need the car
Sure.
out of your name, you need to put it in somebody else's name, so you transfer in title. So a will does that. Anything that is in your name, and you want to transition that in another person's name, spouse, kids, grandkids, charity, it should be documented in the will. The other thing that your will does for you is any things that may not have a title but has some type of sentimental value, or even value. It could be a gun collection, could be a wedding ring, maybe an heirloom that came down from your parents or grandparents. So you can be very specific in a will and say, hey, these items I want to go to this person or that person, or this child or that child. So it could also be specialty items like that. But your will, your last will and testament, is the document that lets the family know and let the courts know. So when they go through this succession process, everybody knows what is to go where. And boy, I tell you, it's a nice thing to have, because otherwise there could be some disagreements,
Hmm.
and certainly you're not looking for that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you want to keep family harmony, and that's
Sure.
really one of the main purposes, I would assume, of doing this, and making sure you have all of this covered is to make sure there's communication and clear direction to avoid any family disharmony or yeah, I'm trying to find the right word, but I've seen it happen, and you've probably seen it happen too when someone passes away. There can be tension between the siblings or the remaining spouse and the siblings on who
Absolutely.
gets what and what happens. And so
Uh,
you want everything clear. And a will is a great way. That's a great start. But a will doesn't cover everything. And I know there are other things we're going to be talking about here.
right.
And a will go through probate, or what is it called in
Succession in Louisiana,
succession?
but
Yeah.
probate, but it's the
Yeah.
same. We have different terms, and there are different differences, but it's the same principle that whether it be probate or succession, it's transferring those assets or those items to the next heirs or entities that you're looking to pass those assets on to. So a properly drafted will from a Louisiana attorney is really a foundational estate planning document. Now, to your point, that's not the only way assets transfer, right? So the other, uh, uh, let's say, estate planning tool that we have at our disposal is beneficiary designations. Okay. So, life insurance, annuities, retirement plans, like let's say a 401k, 403b, any type of retirement plan, will have beneficiary designations. And if you have those designated beneficiaries, okay, then those assets, let's say the annuity or the life insurance or the retirement, the IRA or the Roth IRA, that asset specifically goes to the designated beneficiary. So it avoids the succession process. It doesn't go through the will. It doesn't go through succession. It goes directly to those designated beneficiaries. So it's a very efficient way to pass those assets on. A life insurance policy, if you have a husband, if you have your
Right.
spouse as the beneficiary and you pass away, that's going straight to that person or
Right.
persons. It
And even
doesn't.
if you have an ex-spouse listed as the beneficiary, it's going straight to your ex-spouse,
Tony,
no matter what's in your will, right?
100%. And I even had a case like that.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Where the man, they got divorced and he got remarried and they did the property settlement and everything else. He gets remarried. He set up his own estate plan with his new will, with his new wife. And when he passed away, he failed to change the beneficiary designation on a thrift savings plan, on a retirement plan, still had the ex-wife's name. And guess what? When he passed away, the new wife, where the will said, hey, everything goes to the new wife, that asset, that thrift saving plan went to the ex-wife because he failed to change the beneficiary. So that really speaks to how powerful a beneficiary designation is. It bypasses the succession and the will and goes to that direct beneficiary. So it's an efficient way, certainly, to pass assets on, but it's also got its own nuances. One being that it doesn't go through the will. So you
Right.
better make sure that it's
Yeah.
clear. The
Yeah.
other thing, if we're going to talk about, nuances, the other thing is you have to be careful. Like, let me give you a quick example. I have 4 boys.
Yep.
So primary beneficiary on my stuff would be my wife. And then my contingent beneficiary, second in line, would be my 4 sons. Now, let's assume my oldest son or any of my sons get married and have kids, now grandkids. So the question is, and I mentioned Anthony and I like boating. Let's assume that we were killed in a boating accident together. Or let's say he predeceased me. All right. And he's my beneficiary. So the question is, do I want Anthony's share? He died. I died. do I want his share to go to his kids? Okay. Now, there's no right or wrong answer. But if you asked me that question, I would say, yes, my grandkids, Anthony's kids, if he passed away prior to me or at the same time, I'd want his kids to receive his share. Well,
Yeah.
guess what? If it's not set up properly on the beneficiary form, I just disinherited those grandkids, and the remaining 3 get a third, a third, and a third.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah.
what I'm saying is, beneficiary designations are a great way to pass on assets, but the beneficiary forms have to be clear with scenarios that come up.
Yeah. So you're talking about the different beneficiary designations per Stirpes and per
Yes,
capita.
correct.
Right. So each primary beneficiary per Stirpes is, I think, what you mentioned, which each beneficiary branch will receive
the Latin term,
the specified portion,
correct,
even if one or more of the primary beneficiary passes away before the owner. But per
correct.
capita is only the surviving primary beneficiaries will receive an inheritance.
Bingo.
Yeah.
So again, there's no right or wrong here, Tony, but it's just having someone walk you through an estate planning. We have an estate planning checklist. So we're not, we just asking questions. Hey, well, if this happens, what would you want? Well, if this happens, what would you want? And we're just making sure that the will and the beneficiary designations are simply, done correctly. Our attorney, of course, does the will.
Yep.
We handle the beneficiary designations. But nevertheless, if we know what's important and what the client's looking for, then we can very simply walk them through the process, make sure the estate planning documents are in line with what is important.
Yeah. Well, and I know that that's why you work alongside the estate planning attorneys, and you and your team there work together for your clients to make sure all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. And that's why you want to make sure you go through the list of, really important legal documents, which is, like you said, your will, your powers of attorney, which
living will, power of attorney, beneficiary designations, and a trust.
Right.
And so what we've covered is the will, which is important.
Yeah.
We've talked a little bit about beneficiary designations. As it relates to a trust, and we can talk a little bit about a trust, which is another document.
Yeah.
Okay. And so with a trust, okay, we succession in Louisiana is not, if you have a properly drafted will and a clear title on a piece of property or a bank account or what have you, the succession process in Louisiana is not a big deal. Okay. So your will, a properly drafted will, beneficiary designations are very adequate to pass assets on.
Sure.
Where we see a trust involved, and I can give you some of the primary examples of what we see with our clients and many estate plans that we're involved in with our lawyers, is and I'll give you just some quick examples. If it's a special needs situation, like let's say there's a special needs child or special needs grandchild, well, then a special needs trust is going to be important because that special needs person maybe can't inherit money directly. They can't manage money, so that it needs to go into a trust. We don't want their benefits, maybe state benefits, to get affected, so the special needs trust can help in that regard. Another trust that I see a lot of is if somebody, like they call them spendthrift trusts, like maybe you have a child or grandchild or someone in the family and you say, hey, this person's great with money, this person's not so good with money. We want to set something up to where, this son, let's say, who's not good with money, gets so much per month or year, like a structured settlement, a structured payment. Well, we see trusts, people set up trusts for that. Another example might be, I have a client who has a camp, for instance, in Grand Isle, and he loves his camp, and his kids use the camp. The grandkids use the camp. When he passes away, he wants the camp to stay in the family. He doesn't want the camp sold unless all the kids agree. But he's got to put a trust he's got to put the camp in a trust for that. In other words, he's might have some specific instructions, right? You can use the camp, you can, but he wants to keep the camp in the family. Well, you need a trust for that. So what I'm saying is there are reasons to have a trust, but it's not one size fits all. Everybody needs a trust. Okay. If we don't have specific reasons, a will and beneficiary designations as it relates to just passing assets on are very efficient.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's true. And maybe you have a situation where um one of your like health issues, like you said, special needs, or you have one child where they've had a lot of problems and you don't want to give them a lump of money, so you set up a trust so they receive payments,
Right.
right? Instead of getting a lump sum, right?
Right. Yeah, now we'll say then you have out here this irrevocable trust where people will put money and lock their money into an irrevocable trust and try to go through this 5-year look back for Medicaid and long-term
Sure.
care planning. And so we don't want to, get deep into all of that here on the radio show. But I will say that we and our attorneys do have opinions on all of that as it relates to long-term care and look back audits and all this type of thing. But let me just say that it's all part of an estate plan, right?
Yep.
And how assets pass on. And if you have any particular instructions on how these assets should pass on, what the tax implications, and the other thing too, Tony, sometimes people have, blended families, right? I mean, maybe married, a second time or even a third time, and you have kids from previous marriages and that sort of thing. And so this whole idea of estate equalization, like maybe the new spouse, we want to take care of the new spouse and the kids, but then we have kids from a previous marriage and we want to take care of them as well. And so what are the best assets to point to them, for just to be fair, right?
Sure.
So, and that's really what estate planning is. It's like I say, it's really no right or wrong. It's just trying to determine what's important, and then making sure that we've asked the right questions and have the appropriate documents in place to make sure it's not going to be, a problem later for our family.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's super important that people do this. And what I've found, Anthony, is that communication is the key. You need all these documents and all this in place, but make your children, make sure your spouse and your children are part of this planning and understand what you've done. And I would even you and your spouse can go in and meet with an estate planning attorney and meet with your team there at Wealth Builders. But then at some point, I recommend, from what I've seen, like when my grandfather passed or with my mom and dad, I think it's important to bring all the siblings in or your kids in with and meet with the estate planning attorney and go over what you've, okay, here's where everything's going. The more open you're about who gets what in communication beforehand, then it's, you can sleep well at night. You did your due diligence. Everybody knows what the playing field looks like. And if a particular child has an issue, they can have it with you and not their siblings. Again, you don't want to cause disharmony in your family. You want to leave them with clear instructions. You don't want to make life difficult for them. And you certainly don't want to do anything that would drive them apart. But that happens a lot, doesn't it?
It unfortunately it does, and I think it's to your point. It's just because of either poor planning or or no transparency, and really it doesn't have to be that way. It's not, honestly, it's not a big deal. I mean, it's really not. It doesn't have to be a big deal. It's just clarity and making sure that you have those documents in place. The other two that I want to mention briefly, Tony, is a durable power of attorney and a living will.
Oh, yeah.
So these are items. So really, we talked about a will, a last will and testament, a beneficiary designation, certainly are estate planning tools. a trust or different types of trusts. Then you have a living will and a power of attorney. The living will is an estate planning document that the attorneys typically throw in there. And it's just hey, I'm on life support. It's like this Mary Shivo, this woman in Florida. People may remember that
Oh,
story.
yeah.
She was on life support. There was
It's like a medical directive. A living will is also called a medical directive, isn't
medical
it?
directive.
Yeah.
You're saying, hey, I don't need, we don't have to put the burden on anyone to make that call. If the machine's keeping me alive and two of my attending physician statements and everybody agrees that it's just the machine's keeping me alive, then, you don't have to keep me hooked up to it. And there was some obvious conflict in the family there, and they kept her on, and it was very expensive, and insurance ran out. And so that's your living will. And then your power of attorney for medical and financial directives as well, decisions. Whoever the person is in your life, if you were in a situation that, you couldn't act in your own stead, you needed help with financial directives or medical directives, and you need somebody to talk on your behalf, whether that be your spouse or your kids or a good friend or a family member, a niece, a nephew, whoever the person is in your life that you can envision. If you're in a situation, a compromised situation with your health, and you have this person next to you that's going to be there for you, you know who that person is.
Yeah.
If they don't have your power of attorney, okay, you have just handicapped, you have handcuffed that person.
Yep.
You could be married for 50 plus years, and if that person has an account in their name and you're not on it, the financial institution does not have to and won't talk to that person.
Right.
And you could say, hey, I've been married 50 years. This is my husband. Hey, it doesn't matter. If you don't have their power of attorney for financial and medical directives, you're basically handicapped or handcuffed.
Yep.
And so that's an estate planning document. Your will, your living will, your power of attorney. These are all very straightforward documents that we should all have. And then, of course, your beneficiary designations need to be checked and made sure those forms are correct. And then trusts, if need be, there could be a need for a trust. But, that's it, Tony. It's not overwhelming. It's not really a big deal. What we do at our firm is we have a family estate planning checklist. So when we sit with our clients, we ask, questions to see what's important. And then we go about the business of making sure that they have the documents they need.
All right. Well, that's so important. Now, Anthony, we're out of time for today's show. I know we could probably do 3 shows on this topic. It's an important one. So, listeners, if you have questions or want to make sure you've got a solid plan in place or get a review of where you're at with your estate and enhanced planning and legacy planning, give Anthony and his team there a call at Crescent City Retirement Group. Anthony, how can our listeners get a hold of you?
Absolutely. Well, just, our pick up the phone. I mean, that sounds kind of old school, doesn't it? But, 504-828-2171. Certainly give us a call. Just ask for me. Let our staff know that you listen to Tony and I on estate and legacy planning. And I'm so happy to talk to you about it. I know every situation is, different in terms of how people want things to go. But please give me a call. We're available at 504-828-2171, or go online at crescentcityretirement.com and schedule some time, and let's just get together and visit. We're so happy to be out here, and you're hopefully enjoying the show and the content. We appreciate our listeners. We love seeing you at our events. We have our retirement events every month. So that's another thing. You can go online and register for one of our retirement events that are coming up. So we want to thank you so much for listening.
Yeah, thank you, Anthony. And one more time before we go, listeners, go to crescentcityretirement.com, and there you can request a copy of the 2026 Enhanced Planning Guide, or set up a no charge, no obligation consultation with Anthony and his team. And you can also register for their upcoming events. Again, no charge, no obligation. Just mention that you heard about it on the show. Anthony, thanks for all the great information. Listeners and viewers, thanks for tuning in. That does it for today's episode of Wealth Builders with our host, Anthony Cangemi.